Are you a home grower looking for a little bit of help? Are you ready to learn as much as you can about your favorite hobby? The Homegrown Helpers brings you informative interviews from experienced growers that have taken the next steps in their journey and decided to help you grow top quality cannabis all in your home. Now welcome in our host, Rob Smith, along with this week's Homegrown Helper. And welcome to the show, everyone. Are you ready for this week's grow tips and tricks from another Homegrown Helper? Yes, me too. First off, I just want to apologize for the audio quality in the intro and ad read for this week's episode. My recording equipment has been sent out for repair. It's on its way back to me right now as I'm recording this, but it's not here yet. So I'm getting all new equipment, and right now I'm just recording straight into the computer. So I apologize for the difference in audio quality. It should be back to normal next week. This week I have Nathan Liu of Mongol Tribe and so many other things. You'll hear all about what he has going on during this episode. It's a lot. Whenever I feel like I have a lot going on, I love talking with people like Nathan because it reminds me that I do take a little bit of time and spend it with my family. Nathan definitely has a lot of projects, and sometimes this industry can feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. There are so many niches to get involved with and untapped markets where, you know, somebody with a lot of ideas can get distracted and do lots of things. But Nathan seems to be doing all of them well, so kudos to him. Nathan and I had a really great call. We really jived with each other, as you'll hear throughout the interview. I think I say it a couple of times that I really enjoyed talking with him, and we connected on and said a lot of the same things and had a lot of the same thoughts. Felt like we really could go on forever. In fact, we did. We chatted up afterwards, and this is a particularly longer episode than normal. So I hope you enjoy it. It is a little bit long, but that's where the best conversations really tend to come out. You know, I do have to thank all of you guys for the continued support. The ratings and reviews have really started to come in and has bumped our number up from 4.7 to 4.8, and I can't thank you enough for that. Today's review comes from Homegrown CA, and I imagine that stands for Canada. They just legalized up there, and this came back at, pretty much the very beginning of our journey here at the Homegrown Helpers, and it says, great podcast, super informative. I really like the quick format and shorter episodes to make it easy to soak up information. So thank you, Homegrown CA, for leaving that review, and to the rest of you guys for leaving a rating and review. It's really the only way to help us grow. I mean, you can certainly subscribe and share the show with any growers that you know, particularly if you're in any, chat rooms or Facebook groups or anything like that. Please feel free to let them know about your favorite episode, and hopefully we can gain a few more listeners to this and Growcast podcast. So I want to let you guys know that we have our next Grow Pass AMA coming up on November 2nd. That's your chance to ask the team here, Wolfman, Jordan, myself, and Rizo Rich. That's pretty much our regulars. Sometimes we have a few other people pop in, but you can ask us pretty much anything you want. Whether it's about growing or our journey to get into the industry or what have you. But that's coming up on November 2nd, and that is for Bloom members only, members of our growpass.com membership program. You can find all sorts of amazing information there, like our deficiency charts we just released with leaf drawings, and our Grow Pass journal that's only available for members. So it's a great way to track all of the things that you do in your garden, just like all of the consultants here on the show suggest. Last thing, before we get you to our interview with Nathan Liu, I just want to thank our growpass.com partners. We have Dealzer, the online hydroponic store that provides you everything you need under the sun with 10,000 products or more. Humble Garden, which is the world's first smartphone filter for HPS lighting. Basically takes the yellow and provides you a nice clear picture. And Soham Living Soils, the best water-only living soil, organic soil out on the market. Stay tuned later in the show to hear those promotional codes, those coupon codes to save you 10% or more on all your orders, and details on how you can save more by becoming a member at growpass.com. So without further ado, let's welcome in this week's guest, Nathan Liu. And welcome to the show, Nathan. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Why don't we start you off with a nice and easy question and just give us a little background about yourself, your name, the name of your consulting company, and how long you've been growing cannabis.
Yeah, my name is Nathan Liu, and I have a Liu family farm and nursery, and I'm located in San Diego, California. And, I've been growing herbs since I got my medical license back in 2004. And, from hydroponics to soil, tried a whole bunch of different methods and figured out what I liked. And, so now I'm starting to share some of that wisdom with other folks that are interested in taking this journey on their own.
So what made you kind of take that leap and go from, personal cultivation or helping out some friends and family and decide to spread your wings and start a business helping other people learn how to grow cannabis for themselves?
Yeah, so my educational background is in agriculture and natural resource management. Being in California, I think it's really an important space for us to, kind of set precedents, right? And so I took this opportunity as that, there's a lot of folks in the community that are looking for that support of cultivating quality medicine or having access to quality medicine. And, given the challenges in the industry around pesticides and herbicides, the only, real viable method for us to create that clean, consistent understanding is to, either grow it ourselves or have that connection relationship with someone that's growing it. So to me, it was the most, viable opportunity to be able to plug in and share with people on how to do it. Because I meet a lot of folks that are interested in growing anything, food or medicine, and that oftentimes has some hesitancy around it. So, if I can help plant seeds and eliminate some of those challenges for folks, I feel like that's a great way for me to use the educational knowledge and the experience that I've gained over my years.
Now, was plant seeds a metaphor or figurative or both?
It's a little bit of both,
Yeah.
Because, we're cultivators. So,
Right.
and I consider myself an artist. So that side of it is where it gets really fun. We got to plant seeds. We got to put those ideas into action. And to me, that's one of the best opportunities is to really just show people by doing it. And so that's kind of my intention in this, is to be able to, in a sense, walk people through the whole process and give them a little bit more confidence in themselves, as well as, this greater understanding about how plants actually work.
Totally. Planting seeds of knowledge and thought, as well as the actual planting of seeds. I've always been amazed at why, and maybe it's because it's been behind closed doors for so long, but why do you think that people assume that growing cannabis is so much more difficult than growing any other plant?
Yeah, that's it's an interesting question. It's something where I feel like it just kind of depends where you grew up. Like the Midwest obviously is a huge farming belt, and the philosophies around farming are completely different than here in San Diego and California. The West Coast is a lot more focused on tree cultivation, and particularly in San Diego, we're nursery and floriculture. So, I think it kind of depends on your upbringing that, if you have had exposure to growing plants in your life, then, you kind of have a general understanding of what those needs and requirements are. Whereas, someone from the heart of New York may not have any experience growing plants. And, in that sense, I feel like it's kind of like there's this, this disconnection from nature as a whole. And that could be even as simple as preparing our own food. So I kind of look at it as more of a holistic aspect where food and medicine and our connection to the environment we've been separated from that inherently through our social settings. And if we as an individual haven't had that cultural continuity provided in our upbringing, then it's very easy to have that disassociation and assume that things are a lot more difficult or challenging than they actually are. But also, people that have tried growing things have had failures and have had challenges because it's life, and agriculture inherently has some aspect of loss in it. And in some sense of our educational system, as an example, is that we tend to measure things based on, perfectness or completion in this manner of measurement, rather than it being the experience providing us understanding and opportunity for more growth. And we got to keep learning. It's definitely something where I do my best every day to learn more about it and seek more knowledge, which, brings us here to this place. And, and I appreciate folks like you that are, putting the diligence forward to organize some of this for other people that are interested.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those thoughts. They're very succinct and on point. I think you really brought up some good points about, where you've grown up and the society and the type of people that you've been around, and whether that's been something that you've needed to do is grow your own plants outside of maybe a cactus that you got when you were 8 years old or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. So Nathan, why don't you tell me about your current grow setup? The number of plants you got going on, the type of lights, soil that you use, how big the pots are. Bring our audience into your grow room and kind of get us experiencing what you work with every day.
Yeah, totally. So in San Diego, we're finally cooling off a bit. So, this is when I transition towards more of my indoor focus. I love the cultivation tent. It's definitely revolutionized the indoor cultivation experience and really simplified it for folks interested in participating. I started out back in the day with using PandaFilm and having to create my own space, and it's a lot to commit to when to grow in a full room versus like a 4x4 tent.
Totally.
So personally, I really am a big fan of the 4.5 by 4.5 foot tent. As tall as they can get. 6.5 feet as typical, and that's basically so I can fit a 4x4 tray in there. And I've been a big fan. I've actually met the creator of these specialty growing pots called Radical Bags. And these guys are based out of Colorado, and they're kind of they're an air pot, where they're doing the air layering. It has it's kind of a mesh type pot.
Yep.
And I'm a really big fan because as you get to the larger ones or larger sizes, they have a Velcro up the side, and it's really easy for transplanting. And so I'm the type of person where I like to every couple weeks be staging my plants up into bigger containers.
Okay.
So from cutting, I get them up into 1 gallon containers, and then every couple weeks I'm trying to transition them up. So into 3 and then 5. And by the time I'm in flower, I'm looking at, in a 5 gallon transferring to either a 10 or a 15 a few weeks into flower. So as far as space goes, I'm more of a quality over quantity kind of guy. So I tend to grow less plants in my area than probably most folks. So I'm usually only having 3 or 4 plants in that kind of space, mm-hmm. and trying to grow larger plants. My typical yield is around 4 ounces for most of these guys. And I'm usually using a 600 watt high pressure sodium in there for flower. And for veg, I'm usually running either 250 or 400 watt metal halides. So my philosophies on, fertilizer and such are, I take an organic background. So, I really think utilizing organic products is really important. And so I'm a big fan of Roots Organic and the Aurora Innovations line of organic fertilizers. And, there's a whole swath of various soil. As a scientist, I like to run tests and run side-by-sides and those kind of things. So, Roots Organic, again, makes another great product. I've also used Royal Gold, which is a cocoa-based product, and that's also based out of Humboldt. I like the folks at what's their name? Malibu Compost.
Yep.
Those are some of the good friends, and they have great products as well. So, I mean, the soil, there's a whole plethora of options out there. My big thing is in veg, I'm using something that's slow draining, and in flower, I'm using something that's fast draining. And that's the biggest thing to kind of consider when it comes to soil. But yeah, I really have had a lot of success with, that kind of philosophy of having something in veg be really, having that kind of structure and foundation of it's able to retain the water, and then knowing that going into flower, I'm wanting to feed more so I can increase that drainage.
Can you dig into that though? Like, it's the first time I've kind of heard it mentioned like that. And I think I know what you mean, but I'd like you to be a little more specific about are you switching media or are you amending it?
So the idea is that, okay, when I'm going from clone to that 1 gallon, I'm utilizing, for example, in Roots Organic, they have a product called Greenfields, right? Mm-hmm. And that's their slower draining option. And it has a little bit of fertilizer, right? Because at that stage, I'm not really looking for a high fertilizer volume. Mm-hmm. So when I'm in veg, the amount of water that I need to put into that is a lot lower, right? First off, it's a lot lower area, a lot less area. So it doesn't require as much water. But then as the plants grow, they're utilizing more water. So having the ability to stage them up as they go into flower, into utilizing the faster draining soil, which is their Roots Organic Original, I believe, is their faster draining soil. Mm-hmm. And in that sense, it helps me to be able to water a larger volume and water more frequently. And I'm watering about 1 gallon of water for every 3 gallons of soil, and that's every third day. So, my rhythm is very consistent in that volume, utilizing this kind of method. And, especially because we're in a drought here in California, I'm trying to be extra diligent about my water usage, and then also make sure that my plants are getting enough water for all their needs. Right. So, yeah, so it's definitely it's an aspect of being aware of how much the plant actually demands in water, and then also encouraging them when they start to grow and have a higher demand to actually utilize that volume.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
You also said something that I have to dig into because I'm a big plant energy guy. And I want my plants to be focusing their energy on flower production during the flower production time. But I'd love to hear your reasoning behind this. You said that you go up to 10 to 15 gallon pots a few weeks into flower.
Yep.
What's the reasoning behind that, I guess? Because I've always assumed or thought or learned that you want that root ball established before heading into flower.
Yeah.
And then you don't want it focusing on root production when it's supposed to be focusing on flower production. But I'm sure the way you talk about growing, I'm sure you have an explanation for that.
Yeah. So, my background, really, I consider myself an orchardist. I have a food forest that I'm cultivating, and the reasoning behind it is that, the plants, the more space they can get to develop roots, the more opportunity there is for energy absorption, right? And nutrient absorption.
Sure.
And so my thought behind it is that as the plants are developing, there's this vigor that I'm trying to maintain, right? And so as they're going from cuttings, they have this vigor of growth in the roots, and we can see it, right? Mm-hmm. We transition into these larger pots and containers in what I perceive as a relatively quick pace. 2 weeks is a pretty short time to stay in one container and go into the next, right?
Totally.
But what the idea is to encourage that root growth to continue to reach those edges.
Okay.
When I'm pulling a plant out after 2 weeks in one container and going to the next one, it's not like I'm losing much soil out of it, right? It's already really well established. And into flower, the idea is that, first off, I take my cuttings somewhere between 7 and 10 days into flower because of those chemicals that the potassium and phosphorus are actually supporting the root development. So I have a higher success rate taking cuttings in that 7 to 10 day window in flower. Subsequently, I want to give them a little bit of time to kind of restore their vigor. And so after I take my cuttings and again, I'm pruning for shape. So I'm not like, making a massive change to the plant structure. I'm really just organizing it in such a way that encourages its production in the way that I want, like you said, I'm targeting flower growth. So then after that 7 to 10 day window, I'm allowing another week or so for the plant to kind of restore its vigor. And that's when I'm transitioning it into that larger container, because now I'm giving it more room to spread its roots. So again, it kind of depends on the type of plant, and what size you're going to go into. But I really at least like to go into a 10-gallon because that, at least to me, it feels like there's more root space. And the way I kind of think about it is each leaf essentially has a direct connection to a root, particularly the water leaves, have that direct connection down to a root within the soil and, has a subsequent branching off of it. So the more root structure I can support, the more leaf structure I can support is kind of my philosophy behind it. So, I'm a big fan also of mycorrhiza and great white myco, and those kind of products to me are critical for success. And so I'm regularly utilizing that to increase my root hair production and increase my nutrient assimilation. And so in that aspect, I feel like plant vigor is plant vigor. If the plant's growing vigorously, then, having more room for it to do that is only going to encourage the plant to actually be able to structure more and hold more.
Wow, really interesting, man. I wish that I was still growing. I'm living in a place where I can't grow right now.
Yeah.
But I would love to put this to the test and kind of see the difference. Because it's, like I said, completely opposite of however I've always practiced. But that just gives me more reason to experiment with it.
Yeah.
So,
well, then I can put more water into that container too, because again, at a 1 gallon to 3 gallon soil ratio, a 5 gallon pot only is going to be able to take 1.5 gallons, 2 gallons at the most of water.
Sure.
Whereas a 10 gallon pot, I can put in 3 gallons of water, and, a 15, we're looking at closer to 6. So, in that sense, there's the bioavailability, right? And, that's kind of the challenge indoors.
I guess I should explain, like, I would transplant probably no less than 2 weeks before flipping into flower.
Right.
So giving it that larger space, but allowing it to kind of establish its root base a little bit more, stretch for that, first couple of feedings, in the pot, and then switching in. So it, when that plant switches its attention to growing flowers, I always just thought and assumed that I was doing it the right way.
And that's what's cool about this, right? It's like there's so many philosophies on it.
That's why I'm doing this podcast.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And, my idea is not, I have my own kind of like what one might consider a proprietary method. In that sense, it's really, that's kind of where I feel like my background in agriculture and cultivation as a whole, gives me a little bit more of a comprehensive viewpoint on it. Again, like the goal is for me is to kind of get towards those greenhouse production scales and start to actually take this into a commercial level and, influence those other commercial growers to make more mindful decisions in their processes. So yeah, it's a beautiful art.
Yeah, totally. And I started this podcast because I want to be able to, sometimes we're going to get down to, there may be a couple things that we need to pay attention to. Like we get a lot of the same answers for the next question I'm about to ask you. But then there's, lots of things that aren't proven out. And,
right.
I want to get those different opinions. Like I said, I wish I still had a grow tent because I'd love to see this firsthand and experiment with it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully our audience, and that's the other reason we do this, is so that the audience can hear different techniques and try those out in their grows and see what works.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's interesting because I also care for reef aquariums, and it's kind of an interesting thing where you think about the volatility of a smaller tank because it the evaporation of water and the balance of chemicals within the system is a little bit more difficult to control in those smaller volumes. And so I kind of mirror it in that same manner where like when I have a larger system and I have more space for those roots to grow, the likeliness of, me having a plant wilt is a lot lower because there is more volume of water and more volume of soil. And so, again, it's like, it's all for each person to kind of work through on their own. And sometimes, we run out of area. So that's the other challenge of going with larger containers.
Right.
But for me, like I said, I would rather have a quality over quantity. So rather than growing 20 plants or 12 plants in a small space, I would rather grow 3 and just have them be much bigger. So
great stuff.
Yeah.
So Nathan, what do new growers need to pay attention to the most when it comes to improving the overall plant health?
Yeah, my number one thing is soil. soil is everything. Soil's not only is it the media and the foundation for the plant itself, but it's that which holds all the life and nutrients that the plant needs. So to me, the paying attention to the soil and the health of of how we cultivate that soil will ultimately let the soil do all the work for us. It's going to be the curator, so to speak, of the growing experience. I think that starting with a really quality soil product, and again, we mentioned there's a handful of them out there, and making sure to encourage the biological diversity within that soil, which again, I mentioned the ectomycorrhiza and rhizomal bacteria and funguses and bacteria, the utilization of that is going to help simulate the natural growing environment that plants want to be in. And so to me, the foundation of good grow, whether indoors or outdoors, is soil. So that's really where the heart of it lies for me.
Yeah, especially when you are going with a truly living organic soil that provides everything for that plant from beginning to end.
Yeah, and it's a rhythm. With the organic philosophies, it's really about being prepared for the future, right? And being able to know that the soil holds all the nutrients that I need, and by encouraging the soil and the bacteria and rhizomes and biology within the soil to support the bioavailability of those nutrients, it encourages the plant to be able to have access, and it opens up those pathways for access to those nutrients. Because it's by just putting the fertilizers in there isn't going to make the plant absorb it. It really has to seek it out, and having the soil life be able to create that symbiotic relationship with the plant is really critical for the ability to maintain that quality of life. So, I think that those folks who take that intention and it's like we invest so much money in all the equipment, and so many people I've met that they just drop the ball in the soil, and they kind of cut the corner there because they think, what does it matter, right? And then I have to remind them that's the foundation of life. Everything is really dependent upon that. And, I've grown in hydro as well. So, I think that, there's a value and potential there for success. I've had success in it, but for me, it's like the simplicity of having a soil experience rather than a hydro experience makes it where the risk and the cost investiture to move into hydro is just not worth it to me. My yield increase is only maybe 20%, but my cost of investiture and time, and again, the volatility, because I, as a scientist, can manage it and am diligent. But for folks who it's their first time growing a plant, shouldn't really even consider hydroponics. It really is not the ideal situation, because soil, it's just so much simpler, and it's really more forgiving. And I think for folks who are really starting out, it's a foundation that's necessary to create the understanding of how life works in this manner.
I also think that with legalization has come a wave of really amazing products that make it easier to do the just soil route and the just add water.
Yeah.
Like you said, the Roots Organic team, Sohum Living Soils is a partner here on the show. I don't know if you've heard of them before.
Yeah.
Michigan Mix is another really popular one that's kind of up and coming.
Nice.
And those soils that you just add water to take so much work out of, becoming a new grower.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Should take so much intimidation. I mean, to just be able to add water and not even need to pH it, and
right.
Don't worry about runoff and ppms and all that type of stuff.
Right.
I wish that when I first started growing that stuff was around, because things might be a little bit different nowadays.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and that's a lot that I hear too, is like, oh, you got to have filtered water, you got this or that. And there's a lot of fallacies out there. And of course, you can get as detailed and in depth as you'd like, but simplicity is everything. And we're living in such a fast-paced society, and being able to take proven concepts and utilize things efficiently, that's really what we need more of. And so I agree. I'm glad that there's more folks that are taking that into account and putting together the single bag of fertilizer and the use tap water based soil. I think that's important. So yeah.
So Nathan, we're all limited by legal plant counts, and every grower is trying to get more out of those plants.
Yep.
So what would your tip be the single highest leverage move a grower can do in order to increase the yield off of a limited plant count?
Yeah, so my approach is, again, being an orchardist, I focus on pruning. So I think that, that's one of the best methods that we can use to increase the yield and the quality of the yield, as well as to, address any potential pest management issues that we might run into. So, in an indoor environment, obviously airflow is really important. So having that, a structured plant that can support more weight. I tend to eliminate most of the thinning on the bottom and then kind of thin within so that, I get that more focused structure. And I think that's a really key piece of how to focus that growth because, I think about it in an energetic way of, there's one unit of energy and that plant is going to use that one unit of energy to disperse across its growth and development. So if I want that energy to focus in that grow window, that kind of 2-foot bubble around the light, then I need to really encourage that plant to develop in that way. So to me, that's one of the best methods for improving my yield because I'm eliminating kind of some of that sparseness and what would potentially be really larvae thin kind of growth from the bottom and kind of moving that energy up into the upper part of the plant. And so to me, that's kind of the main method that I utilize. And then, being really mindful of like kind of your duration of flower, right? Where typically we're looking at this, 10 weeks of flower and that kind of 60 to 80 day window. And just being considerate that, around week 5 to, week 7 is kind of when you really are going to need to bump up your potassium and phosphorus utilization. And the plant in and of itself is going to show that vigor of growth and flower production. And, just being aware of when that happens, that we need to get that little bit of phosphorus potassium boost in there. And so that just mindfulness of timing, I think, is really important. And knowing when to fertilize at what volumes is really kind of, that's the art of it too, of being able to recognize my plant is in more demand of this fertilizer. And in order to support the development that's coming, I need to increase this availability. And what's great about potassium and phosphorus is that it's not water soluble like nitrogen. So it'll stay in the soil. And, this is why I love using catch trays or, some type of tray containment beneath my containers. So that way, whatever I water in is going to be reabsorbed back up into the plant. So, or into the soil. And those are kind of to me, like the most important aspects to consider for focusing on yield production.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we have to take a quick break to thank our sponsors for the show. If you haven't already heard, this is the partners for MyGrowPass.com and all the discounts that they bring you and our members. First up, we have Humble Garden. You can find them at humblegarden.co. And they are the makers of the very first HPS smartphone filter. So you know how when you walk in your room that's lit up with high pressure sodium bulbs, it's very yellow, kind of, exactly what you expect to see out of a streetlight. Go figure. And they created a filter that clips right over any smartphone, right over your camera, and changes that yellow to a softer white, almost like a fluorescent bulb picture. A little bit clearer than that, actually. So if you're curious about that and want one for your rooms, head on over to humblegarden.co and use code GROWCAST at checkout to save 15%, or you can get 25% and chances to win free lenses when you become a member at mygrowpass.com. Next up, we have Sohum Living Soils. These guys are a personal favorite of mine. I've used them and have some tips and tricks for those that decide to use it. If you'd like, you can email me at rob@thehomegrownhelpers.com, and I'll give you those tips and tricks from personal experience. Make sure you go to sohumsoils.com and use code GROWCAST10 to save 10% off, and our members get 20% off after becoming a member at mygrowpass.com. This is the country's best only water soil. Everything you need is right in the soil mixed up. So all you have to do is put your plants in at specific times and intervals based on the age and size of the plant. But all you have to do is add water, and that sees your plant all the way through flower. It's really amazing stuff. You don't even have to pH the water. So go to sohumsoils.com and use code GROWCAST10. The last one for today is Dealzer.com. This is an online hydroponic store with over 20,000 indoor gardening products. Everything from LED grow lights, grow tents, nutrients, soil, CO2, and so much more. Or you can visit them in their brick and mortar store in Paducah, Kentucky. Use code podcast10 for 10% off your entire order at Dealzer.com. Members of GrowPass get 15% off your entire order over at Dealzer.com. You should go check them out. They have everything you need to grow. If we don't offer it to you, they've got it for you in their entire store. So thank you to Humble Garden, Sohum Living Soils, and Dealzer for your continued support. Now, let's get back to Nathan Liu.
So we're back with Nathan Liu. Thanks so much for all the knowledge you've dropped so far, Nathan. We really appreciate it. Your unique approach, I think, is going to spurn lots of people thinking and lots of people talking. I can't wait for this discussion once this episode launches.
Great. Thanks. Yeah, I look forward to it. I always love learning and growing, and feedback is the only way that we're going to be able to really hone in some of these skills.
Yeah. And I think you're going to get some of our audience trying some different approaches here. So that's really cool. So let's dig into IPM in an indoor garden. What are your typical protocols or go-to items to keep your garden and plants clean and healthy?
Yeah. I got to give a shout out to my local, one of the local companies, Dr. Bronner's, right? Where they're located here in San Diego. And I use their castor oil soap all the time for pest management needs. And there's a lot of mix your own kind of recipes out there for, from powdery mildew to aphids and mites and things like that. So that's, that one's always in my arsenal. And then, I'm a super big fan of predators. So I love the cucumerous mites and that whole family of beneficial insects. So I like hanging the little mite packs on each plant. There's you can get those guys for,
I think they're called portable, like sashes or sachets. Yeah. Yep.
They're kind of like a little tea sash, like you said, that has some holes in it and has a little media with some eggs and larvae in there. And, that's what's interesting is the availability is here, but being ahead of it, and that's the other thing with integrated pest management is recognition, right? And preventative. So being able to get ahead of things is really important. And the only way beneficial insects work is if you can fill your army of beneficial insects to outnumber the pests that you're addressing. So I definitely recommend that if mites are common in your area and you're in a warm climate, get ahead of it by putting, hanging some of those sachets in your garden ahead of time, just to encourage that continued population and development. And, if you're in an area where you can cool off your grow room, I'm a big fan of dropping your grow tent in flower down to 55, 60 degrees. At that window, you can pretty much eliminate most bug issues and most pest issues. So I'm a huge fan of being able to, whether it's an AC or whether it's pulling cold air in directly, just being able to reduce that overall temperature of your tent or your room down to 55, 60 degrees is critical. A great method for eliminating a lot of pests. Sometimes you get that benefit of getting some buds that'll turn purple. So that's always fun.
Right on. So give us the rundown with the Dr. Bronner's. What is your protocols with that?
Yeah. So
is that a preventative spray?
I mean, mainly it's I'm using that to treat any type of potential mildews. That's kind of my main use in it indoors. And it tends to be just fill up a liter squirt bottle and put a few drops of that in. Maybe it's less than a teaspoon. And then sometimes I've also used a little bit of milk, that's, splash a little bit of that in there, shake it up, squirt it on the plants. I've also utilized some capsaicin, being able to put a little bit of that pepper into that spray mix as well.
Interesting.
But yeah, there's definitely, and there's a handful of new enzymatic type products out there that also are doing the same thing of eliminating and breaking down those fungal spores. So, anything that's OMRI listed, I really am a big fan of, because, I try to be extra mindful of what could potentially get into our waterways. Also, this is a consumable product, so I want to be extra diligent about what exactly I'm spraying on my plants, because I have the clear intention of ingestion. So, being able to make sure that things are food safe, or at least that, I'm working through that mindfulness of, reading the package and making sure that duration of stay is not going to impact my flower production, so that way I'm making sure I'm spraying in that right window, or utilizing that product in its recommended volumes. Following instructions is such an important part when it comes to pest management, because, you're working with concentrated products a lot of times. And man, it's definitely many a scientist I've seen just dump the whole bottle in and shake it up and call it a day.
Very good point.
That's definitely not the way to go about it.
Very good point. You brought up enzymatic solutions, and I'm not sure if you've heard of Dr. Zymes Eliminator.
Yeah.
The amazing Dr. Zymes. Yeah, they're a partner on the show.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like a good product. I haven't had a chance to test it, but there's another product. I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but it's very similar. It was an enzymatic approach to fungal elimination and multifaceted pest management.
If you find that, shoot that over to me, and I'll get that into the show notes for when we go live.
Definitely.
So, Nathan, what type of characteristics or character traits are most important for a grower to cultivate and, practice in order to succeed at growing some really amazing cannabis?
Yeah. So there's a bunch of personal characteristics that I think are really important. One of them, just kind of like I was touching on in the mindfulness, right? That diligence in, taking the time to read the packaging, taking the time to kind of learn a little bit more about the process before you jump right into it, I think is critical. But yeah, definitely it's something that it definitely takes the willingness to commit to a regular participation. And that kind of, lifestyle choice is really important, because in order to master anything, you got to at least put the 1,000 hours in, and that's kind of how I always think about this is, if you're willing to put in the time to learn, and you're willing to take the risk to try it, get your hands dirty, right? You got to get your hands in the soil. It's like they say about making an omelet. You got to crack an egg to make an omelet. You got to get your feet wet. You got to be willing to take a risk and make a mistake, because that's some of the best learning methods that, we can experience, are to try something, research a little bit, try something and see if it works, and see if it's something, see if we understood it, in that, in a way that allowed us to have success. Even I have challenges at times where, I have to be diligent and persistent with, finding that understanding and solving that challenge. And thinking creatively is really helpful, and having kind of like a holistic view on the concept is really supportive of one's ability to problem solve. So I definitely find it as just being able to take the time regularly to show up is everything. So make a schedule, in the community gardens I work at. I like to tell them that, hey, if you want to have volunteers come out regularly, you need to set a day when you're going to be there. So if you're going to be there Saturday morning every day, then every week, then set it at that time. And so people build that rhythm, and they know, hey, Saturday morning from 10 to noon, folks are going to be in the garden, and I can go there and join and learn. So same thing comes with our personal gardening experiences, right? If I know that I need to check on that plant every day, and I set that time for myself, it can become a routine then. And so to me, developing that routine of practice and experience around it is the most important part to cultivating success. So if that's once a day, every other day, if you're only in there every third day just to water and check on it, that's okay. Just make your consistency and stick with what's working with you, and find your rhythm that balances out within your own practice.
Great stuff there. I think that's I think that's a great takeaway for life in general. You know, the 1,000 hours to mastery, and you know, you got to put the time in.
Yeah.
Nothing comes easy in this world, and you got to put the time in order to succeed. And if it does come lucky or come quickly, you should consider yourself very lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and that's kind of why I'm doing this is like, I'm really hoping that, I can break down some of these social stigmas and these status quo illusions that, people have been hearing about and reading about for so long, and really just, breaking free of that mold. So that way, hopefully some of the experience that I've gained can be shared. And, again, like having programs like yours are helping to facilitate that accessibility to knowledge, and hopefully will help, eliminate some of the time that it takes to have success. So
yeah. If we can shorten that window by 10 or 20%, that'd be amazing for people.
Absolutely.
I used to have a grower's credo that, in my grow room, that if it could go wrong, it will go wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And I like to remind people that no matter how good you start off, and a lot of people get really fortunate. I got really fortunate. I didn't have any problems, but then I probably got, maybe a little careless, a little cocky, not knowing what I was supposed to be looking for.
Sure.
And then I got spider mites,
Sure.
And that was so devastating because I'd been growing for a good period of time, maybe a year, without any real problems.
Yeah.
I had a good friend that spent some time with me and helped me get set up properly and kind of guided me, which, eliminated that, margin of error, like we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
But when that happened, it was so devastating. It was, there was no other solution. I let it go far too long, and everything had to come down, unfortunately.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I've been there.
Yeah. Thankfully, it was just in flower. I was able to keep my veg room quarantined and move, the veg plants as soon as I saw them in flower.
Totally.
Everything at 3 and 6 weeks in flower had to go.
Yeah, and and now, as devastating as that is, now we're in a time where at least we have the accessibility to the resources to clean it out and make the change and get going back again. Because there was definitely a time in not that long ago where folks lost everything, in that way, and it's it was a huge detriment to their opportunities, and so now it's we can kind of chalk it up to a learning curve, and like you said, be able to kind of look at Occam's razor as the simplest answer is often the correct one, and really take that understanding to heart and realize that there's so many different variables to consider, that it really is about diligence and getting ahead of it and learning and paying attention and showing up and really observing. I think that's a big part of this process is really, it's a lot of observation.
Yep.
And learning how to observe. That's like, it's a whole process in and of itself, is like what to look at, what to even consider. And so I think that's probably the biggest learning curve, is really being able to look at a plant and quickly assess it. And that's where bringing in consultants and bringing in folks with agricultural backgrounds, that's one of their trained tools, and it's something that often is like undervalued and taken for granted. I know that's something that for me, it's important to continue to learn and to identify. And I know you had one of my friends recently on, Matthew Gates, an entomologist and IPM specialist. And, I know that having folks like that around who are fantastic observers and great at identification, I mean, those folks, they're critical in being able to find success. And, I'm really grateful that he's putting out some good primers and knowledge for the community. So
yeah, just for the audience, that Matthew was over on Growcast Podcast. You can find that at growcastpodcast.com or wherever you download your favorite podcast. So Nathan, before we wrap things up here on this regular interview, I'd just like to remind the audience that we're going to keep Nathan around for another 5 questions or so. We've been going a little off the rails a little bit, but it's been an interesting conversation and want to keep the knowledge flowing. So if you want to keep the knowledge flowing, head on over to thehomegrownhelpers.com/bonus, and you can download the next 5 questions that I'll keep Nathan around for, and as well as the rest of our guests. You can find the bonus content right there on that one page from all of our guests here on the Homegrown Helpers. So to get on out of here, Nathan, do you have any last bits of wisdom that you'd like to give every grower listening right now? Some parting shots.
Yeah, you got to try it. It's one of those things where if you're utilizing cannabis and it's something that has had an impact in your life, like me as a medical patient, it's changed my life and it's changed my whole perspective on reality. And so it's one of those opportunities where now that times are changing, it's a great opportunity to try it and get out there and invest in yourself. And this is obviously bigger than just the product that you're going to create. It's a lifestyle change, and hopefully you can take those ideas and implement them into your life as a whole and create some food and medicine sovereignty for yourself.
Awesome. Thank you. And how about we end with how our audience can learn more from you and find and connect with you if they'd like to do that? Yeah,
totally. So I'm the executive and co-founding director of a nonprofit called Mongol Tribe, MONGOLTRIBE. And you can find me at mongoltribe.org. And you can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Mongol Tribe. And on Instagram, you can find more information about my farm at Liu Family Farm. And I got my personal accounts on there, and you can link up with me and shoot me some questions and check out some of the other projects I have going on.
So why don't you tell us about this Mongol Tribe real quick?
Yeah, so I started Mongol Tribe last year, and it's a 501c3 located here in San Diego, and we're a community development and capacity building organization that's focused on bridging health and wellness and civic ecology. So I'm working on a various sets of projects, from seed libraries to regenerative agriculture and food forestry. And I'm in process right now of creating a service learning model and a cannabis cultivation course. So we're going to be doing an indoor cultivation course where we start from, go start to finish with folks, 15, 16 week process, and kind of give a handhold, so to speak, to folks that are interested in learning the whole growth cycle. And then we're looking for an outdoor site where we can start doing the same with outdoor hemp and cannabis cultivation. So those are some of our projects that we have in the works. And just check us out on the website and I'll have some updates there where you can sign up for our mailing list and link up with us and find out more about what we have going on there.
Awesome. Check that out, audience. Mongol Tribe, MONGOL tribe.org. And that's where I found Nathan on Instagram. So check him out there as well. So thank you to Nathan so much for your time. This has been a great interview. I hope the audience enjoyed it. And in fact, I know the audience will enjoy it. They love this geeky, deep cannabis plant growing type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to keep you around for another 5 questions. Awesome. If you have time, we're coming up right on our hour. Hopefully you'll be able to stick around.
Perfect. Yeah, I got some time. Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Great. And audience, don't forget about our other podcast, Growcast, and more growing knowledge and tips and tricks, as well as mygrowpass.com. That's our membership program. We do exclusive audios, discounts. We just wrapped up our first $5,000 in Grow Gear giveaway on October 1st, and we'll do another one on January 1st. You have to be a member in order to get entries to that. And kind of lost my train of thought there, but we will end on that thought. So we'll get on out of here and make sure you head on over to the bonus content page and download the rest of the questions we're about to ask Nathan. Thanks so much and happy growing.